as teachers, we become parents as well. We have a tremendous responsibility in rearing a child. In fact, in many cases, we have more face time with a child than a parent does. And so that's an awesome responsibility and something for us to keep in mind. But it's also a tremendous privilege. So when I talk about an awesome responsibility, I'd like to quote something for you. I actually love this quote so much that I used to hang it in my teacher's lounge. The quote is from a child psychologist and former teacher, and his name is Dr. Chaim Janat. You might have seen it. It's very well circulated. I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in my classroom. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized. So yes, it's a tremendous responsibility, and we need to walk into our classroom every single time and take a breath and realize that we're about to engage with children. And we've all had that experience. We've all had that moment where the teacher was so engaging and inspiring and it left an indelible imprint forever. And we've experienced the other side as well. And certainly we want to be remembered for those positives. So let me tell you the following short story. I don't know if it ever happened, but I find it to be very powerful. It's called What Teachers Make, and it was written by Taylor Mali. The dinner guests were sitting around the table discussing life. One man, a CEO, decided to explain the problem with education. He argued, what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided his best option in life was to become a teacher? He said to another guest, you're a teacher, Susan. Be honest, what do you make? Susan, who had a reputation for honesty and frankness, replied, you want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I make a C+ feel like the Congressional Medal of Honor, and an A- feel like a slap in the face if the student did not do his or her very best. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. I make them read, read, read. I make them understand that if you have brains, then follow your heart. And if someone ever tries to judge you by what you make, you pay them no attention. You want to know what I make? I make a difference. By the way, what do you make? So everyone, we all realize that we make special things in our classroom. We make children think and perform. We make them wonder and be creative. We make them stretch beyond their limits and tap into their enormous potential. And we make them remember us. Less for what we taught them, and more for how we treated and inspired them. So I'm going to tell you a personal story. I usually don't do this, but I think it really captures the essence. A little bit of background is in order. I used to teach in a modern Orthodox high school in Chicago, 9th grade class. It was a Navi class. And so I had these boys, it was a boys class only, and I had them 4.5, let's call it, days a week, because the Friday class was pretty short. We didn't have class on Sunday. And so this particular child had come through the Solomon Schechter system. He had come to our school for freshman year, and then they opened up a conservative high school, so he attended that school afterwards. He was in our school for all of 1 year, in my class for all of 1 period a day. A few years later, I meet up with him at the graduation of his former classmates who had just completed their senior year. And I meet up with them, and he said, Rabbi, how are you? I said, great, how you doing? Long time no see. And he turns to me and he says, you know, this past year as a senior, I was asked by my teacher in English class to write about a person that made a difference in my life. And I decided to write about you. So I was flattered, but I was surprised. Why did you write about me? I barely, you had other teachers, plenty of other people that you engaged with. What was it? He said, because no matter what you were doing in class, you were always having fun. Now, I do want to be clear here, just for those who are keeping score. I was not juggling. I was not playing games, none of that. But there was a certain passion, I guess, that he sensed from the class. And that made such an impression upon him that he wrote about it 3 years later in a totally different school, totally different class, because that's what stuck with him. And all of us have that opportunity. All of us have that ability. All of us can go ahead and make a difference in a child's life, whether it's with our affect, whether it's with our words, whether it's the care and consideration that we invest in every lesson. Children may not be able to articulate it, but they know. Children know who's investing in their success. Children know who really cares. Children know who's got their back, so to speak, and is there for them no matter what happens. And we communicate that. We do it verbally, and we do it non-verbally. We do it in a variety of ways. And that piece is so important. Now, the veterans in the room, those of you who have been teaching for a while, you've all watched your children grow up. You've seen them mature, you've seen them transform, and even those of you who just got started more recently, you've noticed year over year, hopefully you've had opportunity to continue to engage with these girls and to monitor their progress and see how they are. And you know that you've had a big piece in that. Now, sometimes if you're lucky, you can, just as we did earlier today, get a thank you card. And I will tell you, to me, those are worth their weight in gold. Actually, they're worth 100 times their weight in gold because they don't weigh very much. But they're worth a tremendous amount. We all have those days. And everybody knows what I mean, I think, when I say those kinds of days. Whether it's because of familial issues, whether it's because we didn't get to prepare properly, maybe we didn't wake up feeling as well as we wanted to, maybe we had a confrontation with an adult somewhere and we feel kind of lousy about it. Who knows what those days are? And sometimes you get a thank you note and you get a little pick-me-up. And personally, I have a little file folder where I keep them for quick reference. Right? And it's also important to be able to do that because we deserve as much thanks as we can get, and we all know that we don't get it enough. So that's certainly something that we can relate to. But no matter how many times a child will say thank you, I want you to realize they can never thank you adequately for everything that you do. You just can't do it. I want to pause there just for a moment for you to think about that for a second. There are people all throughout our community and all throughout the world that are making their income doing all sorts of things. And they're very commendable in many cases. Some of them maybe seem a little more exciting. Some of them may not seem so exciting. But they might be helping others in various ways. You are making your livelihood. You are making your income. You have the opportunity to be a professional teacher. That means every single day, not only do you have the opportunity to hold a job, but you can do so in a way that's transformative, that creates that bond, that long-lasting experience. And that is not something to take for granted. Now, I'm going to go off script for just a moment. And I'm going to tell you, it's often interesting when you see somebody in their adult life and maybe they seem put together, maybe they seem somewhat successful in one way or another. You don't necessarily extrapolate a different type of reality when they were younger. But I will say that in many ways, I was that child that Mrs. Itzkowitz was referring to before. I certainly had a difficult upbringing in my younger years. Not the easiest home, a variety of challenges, I'm sure, for every administrator that had to interact and deal with the Hof kid. And on top of it, I think my behavior sometimes spilled over into the classroom. I remember quite a few times being pulled, kicking and screaming to the principal's office. And thankfully, I made it. By hook or by crook, I've arrived. And so I want to, in retrospect, thank all of my teachers and all of my principals for their patience, but do realize that sometimes in the moment it seems like this child has no hope, this child has no future. There's nothing really worth investing in this child. And I need to tell you that that's not always true. You know, the American historian Henry Adams once said, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell when his influence stops." I'd like for you to pause and think about that for just a moment. Can we ever know where our influence will end? Generations upon generations that oftentimes could look very different just because of the influence you had on a child in your classroom. If we would only appreciate, if we would only recognize what the potential outcome is of our behavior, we wouldn't perform it the same way. Just another day, just another class. Sometimes we have that mentality. In fact, unfortunately, I remember this very clearly from the teacher's lounge where I used to teach. There was one teacher who was very good at counting down the days till the next vacation. She had it all down. That day, by the way, already didn't count because we were already in the building. The half days didn't count, so the whole year was 4 days by the time we were done. And there was something to be said for looking for vacation. We all deserve it. But I thought to myself, if that is our mindset, and she was a good teacher, but if that was our mindset, if that's how we look to it, that it's all about getting past the moment so that we can enjoy the future, and not taking the time to enjoy the moment and live in the moment and inspire in the moment, then obviously we're shortchanging not only our students, but we're really shortchanging ourselves. And that is so important.